Hi, my name is Dejan and I'm a failure enthusiast. I believe that failures are just part of the success and not the end. Together with my team, I'm bringing to you the failure talks and maybe new ideas on how to leverage a setback for a successful comeback. Welcome back to another episode of the Failure Talks, and today is going to be a very special one as I'm sitting here with the co-founder and CEO of maybe the most promising travel startup slash scale-up, we can say, of the last couple of years. Travis Pittman, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks a lot.
So I mentioned it's one of the most promising startups, travel startups. It's called TourRadar.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would love to ask you just to introduce us a little bit more what this startup exactly is doing. What is the problem that you're solving?
Sure. Yeah, no, we're a travel startup focused on multi-day travel. So we connect travelers from all over the world to the tour operators, so the professional tour operators who run multi-day trips. So think of a safari in Africa, think of Machu Picchu at the Inca Trail in Peru, or even like a four-wheel drive trip in Australia. So finding the professionals who know what to do, how to get from A to B, with a guide, getting there safely, and knowing where you're staying, and having the security of also traveling with other people as well. So getting to know new friends and people while you're traveling. So.
How did you come up with actually this specific idea of having a multi-day travel?
Yeah.
It's a platform, right? It's a website, a platform, and you connect the travelers with agencies or
with the tour operators. Yeah.
Tour operators.
Exactly.
How did you end up doing that actually? What was the initial thing, the initial problem that you realized and that you needed to solve?
Yeah, so you can hear from the accent, I'm an Aussie, we're in Vienna here, and I've been actually living in Europe now for 15 years. So a lot of Australians can go to London, so can go to the UK, and where they get a working holiday visa. And so I was one of those many thousands of Aussies that did that. And what we saw was that a lot of those expats living in London, they actually were taking a lot of tours around, Europe and Africa and Asia. But there was nowhere to do that online. So it was all through offline travel agents or picking up the phone and calling the tour operators directly. And we ourselves, so my brother and I are the co-founders, we were doing those tours and we had a few troubles along the way that helped us sort of kind of direct the direction of where we wanted to go.
And what happened? What do you mean with troubles exactly?
Well, we had a great idea of getting a group of friends together to go to Croatia. This is like 2005 sort of time, so Croatia wasn't really a hotspot then. And me being the tech savvy guy, I said, I'll book it online. So I said to all my friends, look, it's fine, I can do it. Some people are in Australia, some are in the US, some are in Europe. They all sent money to us. We paid for it online with this American company. And we all flew into Trieste from different places, landed in Trieste, transfer not there, So we were like, okay. And for the first 10 minutes, I was fine. I wasn't worried about it. Half an hour, no one there, calling the number. It was the middle of the night in the US, no one answered. So yeah, started to get a bit worried, realized that maybe we'd lost our money. Then we started to think, okay, there's a bit of a problem. And then we called the company, no answer. They were in the US, so it was sleeping time.
A scam.
No 24/7 customer support, whatever, it was a scam. We're like, oh, we're screwed, we've lost $5,000 here. And we were in Trieste. Zadar is a 10-hour bus ride. So we had to then get an overnight bus down, hoping that the company would be there. Turned up at the marina in Zadar, walked around for 2 hours, couldn't find anyone who heard of Pittman, or the booking reference or anything like that. Yeah. finally came to one where this lady was like, "Oh, Mr. Pittman, we've been waiting for you. Where have you been?" And we were like, my heart was just like, "Oh, thank God!" Like, you know, because I just felt like daggers in my back from all the people, like basically like saying, "I've transferred you money. We've got a whole week in Croatia. It's not here. What are you going to do about it?" So a lot of things came out of that. We paid money, it was almost gone. The tour operator, we didn't know if we could trust them. So there's a lot of things that we learned from that, but that was kind of the pivotal moment where we were like, we were doing some other things, which I can explain soon, before this, where we're like, okay, this is probably the direction we need to take the business. So it was like a pivotal time of going, okay, we need to now go more in the direction of being more like a travel agency or a marketplace online. So.
Yeah, and I guess when you already experienced something like that, being in Croatia in 2005, having these struggles, you don't know who to call, where to go, there might be also other people having the same issue and asking for a better service.
A lot. And think of it, we run tours all over the world, so think of if you turn up in Kenya or in Costa Rica or somewhere like that, and you just have, you don't speak the language or whatever it is, and then you don't know what to do. So that was kind of the basis of where we started to evolve the platform.
So what I mentioned at the beginning, you're highly successful right now with your company. You just recently closed the Series C round, a huge amount, which is really amazing, and I congratulate that. But you mentioned the pivoting, which means you started somewhere else at the beginning, and I would really love to know what happened, what was the initial idea, and how did you even develop all the way to the pivot and to understand that you have to go a different direction that you initially planned to do.
Yeah, I don't think you can say singular pivot, it's pivots.
Pivots?
I think it's with any sort of startup or, I mean, for us especially, we basically tried so many different things. But yeah, so if I sort of step back in time, like so 2004, I'd moved to London. My brother was living there. So my brother Sean, he was already in the UK. He said, "Come over, it's great." Before I left, I set up a little website for myself to share my own photos. Like, so I had a digital camera back then. It was 2 megapixels, like, so it was, cutting edge back then. And I actually built a website where I could share them and started to, map basically all my trips. So I had like a blog, online blog, journal, sharing that. Heaps of people started to ask me, "How do you do that? Can I do that too? I'd like to share my photos." I can't email photos to my family because people still had modems back then, back in Australia. It was like, the modems. So it was transferring big digital files didn't work. So my brother and I came up with the idea of bug bitten. So to be bitten by the travel bug was the original site, which was also a lesson we learned that create a name that's easy to say, that people don't, go, what was that? Sorry, I don't understand.
I agree to that. My company from Austria that I had, my first startup was also called Very Weird. So I didn't want to even spell it because people are like, what are you talking about, even in English? Did I understand you correctly? You created Instagram in 2004.
Absolutely, yeah. It was totally Instagram.
But with a photo sharing website?
A photo sharing website, who knows? Maybe it could have eventually become maybe ahead of our time, I don't know. But it was a hit. Like in London, we became the photo sharing site. So it was before Facebook was around. So Facebook really started to grow in 2004, around the same time, but only in the US. So it hadn't really got to Europe. So for London, we became the photo sharing site of all the expats. So South Africans, Canadians, Kiwis, Australians, and we also started to build a community because there was no online back then. There was no social media. And so we started to do events where we had 300, 400, 500 people coming to like Soho in London, where we had just parties of travelers. Like, so people who wanted to come together. So we started to build that community through offline events. And then we started to realize that through all the photos being uploaded to our platform, a lot of people were doing tours. So they were actually saying, we actually created that tagging where we could actually tag a photo to say, I did this with G Adventures or Kentucky or the brand of the tour company. And we started to notice really quickly that a lot of our travelers were going on these professional company like tours. And so then we're like, hey, there might be something in that. So we went to some of these big brands and actually said, we've got 100,000 photos of yours. Do you want to advertise against it? And they're like, what? why are people uploading photos to the internet? Like they had no concept of social media.
Yeah.
So and then to even then ask them to give us money to put banners up and stuff like that, they're like, are you joking? You're going to get out of here.
So it was even before the ads,
yes,
the banners and
before
everything.
banners really, like, so we were at that phase of trying to convince them that this was a good idea.
Okay, so there was no revenues back then. You had the community and uploads.
Yeah.
Did you raise some money back then?
No, so Sean and I, we bootstrapped that ourselves. So we basically funded it from our own, work. We were still doing our own jobs back then as well. Sean worked in venture capital, so he had the finance background, and I'm an engineer by trade. So yeah, I was more the techie one and the marketing and kind of everything else.
Which is a good combination most of the time, right?
Yeah.
You have the business head and the techie guy.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then we had to work out how do we make money, and that was Sean kind of at one point was just like, okay, we need to make money, and then we're like, okay, doing this is not going to work. We're not getting people to advertise. We're growing like crazy. There was no Amazon AWS back then, so we had a physical server in Florida that nearly got knocked out by a hurricane once, and I had no backups, like nothing. Like I had no idea how to do any of that. So yeah, it was a wild time, and then eventually we had this pivot to the tour industry, and we said, hey, there's these tour operators who want customers. We have lots of travelers who are wanting to go on these tours, so how about we try and connect them? And that's where the idea of the marketplace of connecting the operators with the travelers eventually came from. So, and that was the start of many, many pivots in terms of our business model, of how we actually started to make money, actually.
And everything even before raising money from angels or later on from venture capitalists.
Yeah.
Once you see that there is like a need and people like that, is it smart to just continue doing everything on your own, or like?
I'd recommend not. I think back then, this is 2005-06 was the time. Venture capital, startups, seed funding, government grants, crowdfunding, all this stuff just didn't exist back then. So very difficult, or not difficult, it just wasn't as easy as it perhaps is today. So we did bootstrap too long, like we tried to fund it, and you realize after a time that you can only do so much yourself. You're only a generalist, you're not an expert at anything. And so you need capital to hire those specialists. So you need a marketing specialist, or you need a developer who focuses on maybe UX or something like that. So you need individuals, and I'm not saying you have to hire a whole army of people, but in the journey early on, really identify the ones you need and have some funding to be able to hire those people, or spend it on marketing if it makes sense, if you're getting a return on the investment. And we didn't do any of that. We tried to just do everything organically, and for us it kind of worked because we focused on SEO, so organic Google search, and that's how we grew the business in the beginning, and that's how we did get to a certain size, because we did that very well, and that was free as such. We didn't have to pay for that.
But once you reach the platform right at the top with bootstrapping, doing everything on your own.
Yeah. So, and then after we kind of realized we need, if we want to really make this a thing, we did need funding. And then I actually found some angel investors here in Austria. And so that's where I had like 4 angel investors who put in some cash. And then it was a bit more serious. Then it was like we had to do a board meeting and we had to send out reports and stuff like that. So, but to get to that stage along the way, we were trying all the different types of, it was either cost per click or subscription models or cost per acquisition. And we tried every business model you can imagine. And it was very unsuccessful, to say the least. So it was a complete fuck up at times, So some of the things we asked our operators to do or the customers to do, I look back on and go, it sounded good at the time, but probably not the best thing to do. So.
And what did you do in the end to become really successful? What business model did you choose actually?
So the one that's been in the industry for the last 50 to 100 years. So taking a commission upon a sale. So if you drive a booking to an operator, they pay you a commission. So and I'm happy to admit it, we thought we were too clever. We thought we could be more innovative and we could do different business models which were more online and in the end, the one that worked, and we haven't pivoted away from that for it's been 7-8 years now. was the commission model. So the kind of lesson, you know, from the fuck ups that we made along the way was the one that looks the hardest, the business model that really looks impossible, and you're like, that can never be done, and people all around you are telling you that can never be done. I had industry experts, I had, you know, people saying this, you can't sell a $5,000 tour online. No one will ever do that. And so you listen to that, you know, you try and ignore it, but you kind of listen, and I should have just said, no, we're going for that one, the hardest one, and we're going to work it out. And that would have probably cut 2-3 years out of our, you know, like this sort of path to success. So.
It's a commission model. It's a model actually that existed like for hundreds of years. Actually, whenever you help somebody to sell something, you get a commission.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But why did people say that to you? And what I also had a lot of times here, even at the failure talks and also the Fuckup Nights, that people say we should have listened to our gut feeling. Yeah. Is that exactly what you also made wrong? Your gut feeling said like, no, just try it, but there are so many so-called experts telling you not to.
I wouldn't say my gut feeling or our gut feeling was that we had to do bookings as such back then. They say, you know, they always talk about timing is really key with being an entrepreneur or a business, and timing was key because the industry wasn't ready. Like we didn't have, the tour operators had no idea of how to get their inventory, so their product, online. It was all in Excel sheets, it was on pieces of paper. There was no way to bring that online. So the technology wasn't there. We were educating them, this is an XML feed, this is an API, like this is how you put photos online. Yeah. So we had to educate the industry. So without doing those steps first, we couldn't have skipped that to get to bookings, because to do a booking, you need real-time pricing, you need availability, you know, is there 5 seats available? Is it 700 euros? Is it 600 euros? So there needs to be a connection. So I wouldn't say that, you know, my gut feeling was like we had to do bookings back in 2007. It wouldn't have worked because the supply side wasn't yet there.
Yeah. So you say, even like, if I understand you correctly, that even these fuck ups, these trying things out that didn't go well, but they were necessary actually to get to this phase where we said, now we have to do it, and now we even prepared maybe the market. So we can't see that as fuck ups, but more like as necessary steps. Is that what you say?
Kind of, but I think we probably spent too much time on too many different versions or variations. Yeah, I mean, you could take it both ways of like, you don't know unless you try, you know, and you've got to try these things and iterate quickly, and if it doesn't work, just dump it and keep going. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was for nothing, but it was definitely, it could have been, I think the journey was like this, and it could have been maybe a little bit shorter.
A little bit shorter, but now you know. Yeah. Now, is there any recommendation that you could give to the audience right now who is maybe experiencing the same and just wondering like, yeah, I'm doing things and I don't know what he's talking about. How can I know when to take the shortcut, or is there a shortcut, or like, is there anything like that we help people not making the same mistake like you did?
I'd probably say measurement is one, like, so, and understand people talk a lot about KPIs and about North Star metrics and things like that. Those are, I think, really quite key to understand where you maybe get a bit of a blip, you know, where you see a bit of a signal to say, hey, this is actually working, or maybe customers like this, or something like that. So trying to get measurement in place, whether it be just a basic, like number of visits or engagement or actual transactions, whatever it is, super key to get that right early. Like if you don't measure the right things early and really think about, I don't really like the term North Star, but it is the North Star. Like, what's the 1 or 2 metrics that you need to follow to get to where you want to go? I think having those and then realizing they can change. Like, you know, so you'll have it maybe and you're like, yep, that's not the one I need, but because you see a signal over here that leads you down this direction. So it's kind of adaptation, you know, growth mindset, as they say, like being willing to adapt and change your path without giving it too much, you know, like, oh, we've spent so much time working on this and so much effort. It didn't work, just drop it, keep moving.
Just drop it. Your last statement is getting me to the term that you used previously, pivots. and pivoting. And that is also sometimes that I'm, when working with companies, they just, they go towards a goal that is defined up front in a business plan eventually. And once they don't reach it, they just drop it and stop it. And in our world, in this entrepreneurial world, like pivoting is like drinking water and breathing. Right? If it doesn't go that way, just read the numbers and try something else. The market is speaking to you, you just have to listen. And the sooner you do it, the better. So what is your opinion, and how can even companies and bigger corporates learn from this agile and agility that you have as a startup founder? And today, not even a startup anymore, because you had like hundreds of employees.
Yeah, I'd say even as we've scaled up, so going from 10, 20, 50 people up into the hundreds, like it really keeping teams small or keeping whether it's products or breaking things down into smaller parts is just absolutely critical. Like I think if you try and I think probably what a lot of the corporates have done in the past is there's a massive objective or goal that they want to achieve, and it's a 2-year process or project or something like that. So of course a lot of stuff can be inefficient in that time and not really get there. The whole way of agile working and delivering weekly sprints or things like that, it's super important, like to break that down. If you start to and that's what we started to probably do as we got bigger. We started to think we had to build bigger things, and it probably wasn't as efficient as it could have been. And because we hired people really fast as well. And so when you bring people on who maybe don't understand what they're doing, there's not 100% clarity of what we're working on. It's not like everyone can get in and just get stuff done, because you need a team and teamwork to make it happen. And so I think having smaller teams with shorter goals or shorter sort of periods where you're working towards something is absolutely critical. And where the teams are getting kind of constant feedback from the stakeholders. So whether that's the marketing team, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the product manager, whatever it is, but getting that regular feedback and communication, I think is key to making sure that you don't go follow down this process and then 6 weeks later, the stakeholder walks in and go, what the hell is this? This is not what I wanted, or this is not in the direction I was hoping to go. So I'd say from a corporate point of view, breaking things down smaller and not thinking that you need to focus on really big things. You can have that, but you've got to break it down into smaller, either weekly, monthly, quarterly, 6 months. I mean, we used OKRs, so they were objectives and key results, which was sort of popularized by Google and is in a lot of startups these days and corporates. And it works well to a degree, but you have to really sort of do it well and manage it well. So, but yeah, the communication and company culture, and we have a saying of let's do this shit. It's one of our core values. So it's just get in, get shit done. Let's not sort of sit around too long and think of the perfect solution. Let's just try, iterate. Doesn't work, let's keep going. So that sort of process I think is key to moving forward.
Oh, you mentioned let's do this shit, and I just remember there are some corporates having also a lot of values, but they're like more let's communicate well, let's speak with each other, and
ours is a hashtag. It's LDTS, so we do keep it a little bit subtle, but
great. But, you spoke a lot of teams, and I would love to finish now the Failure Talk with this topic and actually your team, your company. Sure. I mentioned before you had, and you still have hundreds of employees all around the world actually, and. Culture, especially failure culture, is crucial. That's what I at least see and I believe in. How do you do it in your company? Because I don't want to call it startup anymore. It's successful. You raise a lot of money. You're making a lot of revenues. So, what failure culture do you have in your company, and how do you deal with failures?
Yeah, I think it's, culture starts with the people you hire in terms of the mindset of those people. Are they, another core value is to have a growth mindset, to be adapting to change. And I think if someone comes into a startup or a company even, and they're very fixed in their ways and they don't like change and they don't like getting outside their comfort zone, they won't sort of gel with this type of environment that it's fast-paced and innovation. And so in terms of the failure mindset of people and of the company, we very much we move fast, and if it breaks, we redo it. And we don't want to be putting the blame on people and saying that didn't work. It's like, well, okay, what didn't work? And so the teams have started to do what's called a retrospective, which is very common in the development sort of world, where after a project finishes or a certain milestone, they have a very honest, like, okay, what didn't work? Start, stop, continue. What do we want to start doing? What do we want to continue doing? And what do we want to stop doing? And so that's, I think, key to being able to reflect, not emotionally, like, not where you sort of say, oh, it's because you didn't finish that didn't get done, or whatever it is. It's like, well, okay, this didn't work. How can we do it better going forward? So I think it's trying to remove the emotion out of it, and it's difficult at times. Like, definitely also when you're passionate about something, or you want something to get done, or you need something to be delivered for shareholders, or whatever it is. Of course, there's pressure there, but you got to sort of understand that everyone's doing this kind of for the first time in a way, because we're innovating in an industry that hasn't ever been digitalized, or you're doing things that have never been done. So of course you're going to fuck up and fail along the way, but you've got to deal with that. And you've got to actually understand, pick yourself back up, brush it off, keep going. And so yeah, the team we have, I would say, is extremely special, because a lot of the people just love kind of being with each other. Like, actually going to work, you're actually working amongst friends rather than actually working with a colleague or someone that you don't like. These people go traveling together. They have barbecues. They go down to the Danube doing stand-up paddle boards. So it's a kind of like a family, but it's a bigger organization. And there's a lot of respect, a lot of trust, and that's super important when you think about how can you get a company gelled, focused on a mission or a vision, and then all working towards the same goal, and all kind of realizing it's not going to be easy. You're gonna fall down. We're gonna fuck up. We're gonna keep going, but you've got to have the perseverance to keep going as well. So.
What I would love to ask you now as a final statement, you obviously did a lot of things wrong, but you also did a lot of things great. And you mentioned before, you established this positive failure culture in your company. How did you do that? And what can we also do to have this in our own companies, startups, scale-ups, even big corporations?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to culture in general, like so of the actual organization. And I mean, the famous quote is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that's very, very critical. I do feel, a lot of people, when they come and see what we have there, it is special, and it has got to where it is through a lot of small iterations. Kind of experimentation. And I think growth hacking is one of the big terms of the last years of how do you scale your business, but we kind of hacked our culture in a way. So we sort of took it as an approach of, let's try something. If it doesn't work, we'll kind of throw it away, we'll try something else. And so we, lots of examples of things we did. We had a laptop in each of the kitchens in Vienna, Toronto, and Brisbane, which had a live stream between the offices. And initially it was all super fun and cool, it was very engaging and everything. But then it kind of died away. After 2-3 months, people lost interest. They kind of even felt it was a bit weird, are they watching us? What's going on? So then we just dropped it. And so we tried to think of ways to connect a global organization, which is back maybe a few more years. Video conferencing and the communication tools weren't where they are today. And so we tried to really facilitate that. The other thing we do is called a CFO event. So Chief Fun Officer, not the Chief Financial Officer. And so we dedicated a small budget per person. And then one person in the company would volunteer to organize an event. And it might be a museum tour, it might be a stand-up paddle afternoon, it might be going to a restaurant for drinks or something, but it's where all the different departments come together outside the office and do that once a month. And we do that in each of the offices. And so things like that. And then there's other ones like buddy chats, doing a buddy chat where you have half an hour, you do a video call with someone in Toronto, never met, they're a customer support agent or they're a marketing person, you're in engineering, and you have a half an hour chat just talking about who you are, what you do. So people understand, there's actually humans behind. And it's not just, Mary in marketing, what's she doing or talking about. So trying to build those personal relationships is super critical to the culture then of people maybe understanding and being a bit more empathetic when things don't go well. And so that's really when it comes down to iterating, persevering, failing, the culture holds that together. That's the glue that kind of, brings everything together. So yeah, super important. Yeah.
It is super important. And also my turn to say thank you very much for sharing all this information with us and being very open when it comes to this history of your company and the failures that you did, the pivoting and the way you took it and how you dealt with that. Travis, if anybody from the audience wants to get in touch with you, we would love to put here now your LinkedIn.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn, and also the website is called
www.TourRadar.com.
TourRadar.com it is. And if you, ladies and gentlemen, have any questions, you can either go to his LinkedIn profile or just leave a comment right now here. Please also don't forget to subscribe if you like the interview and the Failure Talks. And it's my turn to say again, thank you so much for joining us here at the Failure Talks.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
Great, thank you.